Hi, Austin and Ashley. Thanks for joining me today to talk a little bit about British Swim School.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much.
I know we just saw each other at convention, and those meetings all go so fast. I wanted to take some time to sit down with you two and just kind of go over British Swim School and some of the details and reasons someone would be interested in this type of a franchise. The one thing that really sticks out in my mind is your tagline, survival of the littlest. And as a mom, and as someone who has experienced firsthand how quickly and quietly a child can slip into the water, it's unbelievable. And so what is the statistic? It's that accidental drowning is the #1 cause of death for children under the age of, is it 7?
It's the #1 cause under age 5, and then it's a leading cause of death for children under age 10. So it's pretty alarming. I've got 3 kids myself, so I hear you. It's scary how quickly that can happen.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about like behind the scenes, like the founder and where her heart was when she founded British Swim School.
Sure. So British Swim School was founded by a woman named Rita Goldberg. She was a competitive swimmer who was unable to keep competing. I think she had a minor injury, nothing major. She's still quite spry. So she started the swim school in Manchester, England, hence our name. And then in the 90s, she moved over the pond here to Florida. And she began franchising the brand in about 2011, I think. And many of the first franchisees were people who were on her team originally, which is pretty cool. So she had aquatics directors, things like that. And they kind of spread out to Chicago and the DC area. And then the brand just kind of grew from there. And so we have, majority of those initial franchisees are still in our system, which is pretty cool.
That is cool. And how many franchise locations do you have now?
So we have about 70 owners who are operating in about 120 territories. And because many of them have multiple pools within those territories, we're in over about 220 pools at this point in both the United States and Canada.
Okay. And then some of those owners actually own more than one territory, correct?
Yeah, most of our owners are around 2 territory owners. So it's kind of a sweet spot. They'll start in one, and then as that customer demand grows, they can kind of open pools where their customers are. So we know people don't want to drive too far to get to lessons. I know I have too much to do to drive 45 minutes to get to the swim lesson. So being closer to the customers helps them out quite a bit.
And you keep saying pools, so let's talk about that. Typically when you think of swim lessons or a swimming school, you think of going to an actual place that has, like we have them here in Texas, you go to a swim school and they own their own pool, but British Swim School does it a little bit differently. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, sure. So our business model is that we partner with community pools. So if you think about all the pools that you probably drive by on a daily basis that are in hotels or gyms, retirement communities, rehab facilities, typically they sit empty 75-80% of the day. They're kind of a nuisance to the managers of those facilities. So our franchisees partner with those pools, and they rent space by the day, by the hour, by the lane. There's all different kinds of agreements based on what they need. And so they don't have a 24/7 lease. They've got a rental agreement that is a lot more flexible. And then the facility owners love it because they've had this underutilized resource that they're, spending all this money on maintaining, and they have to have it. But then all of a sudden they've got this influx of people walking through their doors. So for like a fitness center, something like that, that's really attractive to them. And, we kind of have a small footprint on the pool deck when we're not operating. And then we kind of have marketing materials that fit really nicely in a cabinet on the pool deck, but can make quite an impact when they're put out around the pool. So yeah, and we've got a few corporate level relationships. LA Fitness, 24-hour fitness is one, which is really nice for franchisees that match up to that footprint.
And when it comes to partnering with those pools, somebody just getting into business, does British Swim School help them with obtaining those pools in their territory?
They do. So we have a full-time person who's our director of pool partnerships. So she's got a pool title. And so she does initial training with new owners, kind of help them to identify what makes a good pool, helps them to find the pools that, like I said, many people don't know about, all the ones that are in their area. We've got some really nice training materials, and then each of our new franchisees gets an on-site visit with their dedicated business coach, at the appropriate point in their training, who's physically on the ground with them, going into those facilities, making the introduction, and essentially teaching the franchisees how to then do that down the road. So, we make sure that everybody gets that pool when they need it.
Gotcha. So why would someone be attracted to owning a British Swim School?
Yeah, Austin, you want to take that one?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think there's a lot of good characteristics. I mean, I think the biggest thing is we are truly a mission-based company and organization, and you get to wake up every day, provide these critical life-saving skills, also giving back to the community, but also building a really substantial and profitable business model. With the asset-light nature of our business model, it's a low initial investment, so you can get into it pretty easily, and you don't have that huge asset to manage on an ongoing basis. So certainly keeps those costs very manageable in the beginning and ongoing, which ultimately keeps your profit margins very high. And it's a fun business too, at the end of the day. When you go to a pool deck and see the kids having fun in the pool, it really just kind of makes you happy. And I think that's, one of the things that our franchisees kind of live by. Ashley, I don't know if you have anything to add, but those are some of the things I always talk to candidates about. It's definitely a fun brand. And it's technology resistant too. You can't really teach kids how to swim online. You got to do it in person in the water. So it's definitely not a business that's going to go out of fashion, anytime soon, for sure.
And Amazon cannot deliver that service to your front door.
No, we actually did a marketing campaign about you can't learn to swim online. Like, you can learn to play the guitar, but you can't learn to swim. So it was fun.
Out of curiosity, do you do any classes for adults?
We do. So we've always offered adults as an add-on. It used to be that you would, when somebody went through initial aquatics training, they'd get trained on kind of the child levels, and then you could come back and do the adult. But because we saw such a increase in demand after COVID, so, the latter part of 2020 and 2021, we've actually just in the last few months rolled our adult training into that initial training so that the new franchisees can offer that just out the gate. And so we've got some really fun stories of adults who, like 85 years old, who have learned how to swim, people who, for one reason or another, maybe they had a traumatic incident when they were a child, or they just never had access to pools, which is the case with a lot of groups. They suddenly learn how to swim, and adults are great referrals too. Like, they refer their friends. They like to brag about learning to swim. So yeah, we love our adults.
When do parents, at what age do parents normally come to? Is there a certain age group that parents, or that, like, the bulk of your clients are in a certain age group, and then there's some on the outskirts of that?
For sure. So our classes start at 3 months old, which is kind of incredible. You to see a baby floating on their back, and believe it or not, they can get that muscle memory to, like, roll over. It's those videos. So, but I'd say between 3 and 7 is where we see our sweet spot. And when we look at the levels that the kids are in, they're primarily in that age range right there.
So most of these classes are offered in the mornings or in the afternoons, before or after school, or a mix?
So typically when franchisees are starting out, they've got afternoon classes, like think about 4 to 7 in the evenings, maybe Monday through Thursday. And then on Saturdays, usually, they'll start with like 9 to 12. And then as their customer base grows, they might start some earlier and have some, they kind of build on the edges of their schedule. Obviously in the summer, they're able to kind of adjust their schedule for parents who, are able to do classes during the day as well. And demand peaks in the summer, not surprisingly, as well.
Yeah. And you did mention COVID. So let's talk about that, because, I think that's still on people's minds, right? What kind of businesses continue to thrive in a pandemic? So can you speak to what happened during COVID and what's happened since?
Sure. So, like not surprisingly, we were completely shut down for about 2.5, 3 months. And then, as different government deciding groups made different decisions, we were able to open up, kind of state by state. I would say by the end of 2020, early 2021, we were pretty much fully open. Early on, California came out and declared swimming an essential service, which just nationally, I think, gave parents, quite a bit of comfort in bringing their kids to a swim lesson because, during COVID, I had 3 kids. We were going on vacation to places where we could rent a house that was near a lake or that had a pool. And, much as the pandemic was this awful, terrible thing that happened, kids still needed to learn how to swim.
Yeah.
And I think that parents recognized that. The CDC also came out with some really helpful details early on about indoor swimming pools and the chemicals that are used to maintain them, deactivating viruses that cause things like COVID. So we were able to, we made some modifications initially as we needed to reduce class sizes and distancing and all of that. But we were able to pretty much get back to a relatively normal state, probably sooner than some other businesses did. And then since then, I reported to our system last month that I think every single one of our franchisees did better in Q1 than they did in the prior Q1. But our growth has been kind of incredible for our franchisees. So we've been really blessed, I think, in that way.
Well, you keep hearing about pent up demand, and I think you're right. A lot of families did try to get away to remote areas just to escape the lockdowns, and swimming was involved in a lot of those. So why don't you walk me through a day in the life of a franchisee?
Sure. Austin, you want to take that one?
You're on mute, Austin.
Sorry about that. Absolutely. So day in the life, kind of think about the business. There's typically 2 managerial roles. In most cases, we have your office manager. That's going to be the person kind of running the day-to-day behind the scenes, scheduling lessons, interacting with parents, and kind of, building those pool partner relationships. So most of our owner operators will kind of assume that general manager or office manager type role. And then the other big management role is kind of the aquatics lead or the aquatics manager. So the aquatics lead is going to be largely in the pool more frequently, kind of training the swim instructors and doing more of the in the water instruction. So franchisees, they get the option to kind of choose and pick and do what they want. We have some owners that are in the pool very frequently, kind of doing that aquatics manager role. But I'd say a lot of our franchisees kind of stick to more of the office side, but ultimately it's pretty flexible at the end of the day. And they can kind of pick their strong suits and go from there for sure.
And you do offer semi-absentee ownership as well, right? Where the owner can keep their job or do whatever they're doing, hire that general manager to oversee the operational side.
Absolutely. Kind of the manage the manager type business model. It works very well with this business, as you think, it's pretty flexible and scalable at the end of the day. So, and we actually have a few franchisees that are doing that currently. So, but ultimately, yeah, that certainly is, a great option for this business model.
And that owner does need to be involved. It's not passive ownership. It's semi-absentee, meaning that owner needs to spend somewhere between 10 and 20 hours a week on that business, managing that manager, correct?
Yeah, 10 to 20 hours per week is what we typically look for.
Okay.
And, we like them to start and make that, that first key hire and kind of build that management team from day one. And of course, with semi-absentee, it's all about putting the right people in place to run that business for you. But certainly, we've had a few owners that have had some good success under that ownership model.
And why don't you also, before we get ready to sign off here, I'm sure people are going to want to know what it costs to own a business like this. So what's your total initial investment for a British Swim School?
Yeah, so we typically will award up to 3 territories. It depends on the owner. They can kind of scale it if they want to start with 1. We can go all the way up to 3. So the initial investment will change slightly depending on how many territories you go with. But in most cases, for a single territory, it's going to be right around $100,000 initial investment. That includes the franchise fees, all the initial equipment, supplies, materials. Your first full year of marketing is included in that budget, which we support with on every aspect. So but typically right around that $100,000 point. And if franchisees go with multiple territories, we actually stagger the openings of those territories. So it makes it a little bit more flexible for the owner. So for example, if they got 3 territories, they would typically launch the first one in year 1, second one in year 2, third one in year 3. So it kind of gives them a little bit more ability to, drive some density, get their feet wet in that first territory before launching the second and the third.
And the benefit of committing to, let's say, 3 territories up front is that it locks down that territory so that you own it. Nobody else can have it, right? And then is there also a slight discount on the franchise fee when you purchase multiples like that?
Yeah, there is. It basically it increases by 20,000, so they get a nice discount for that second and third territory.
Okay, all right. And then who are you looking for? I always tell my clients that franchises are not purchased, they are awarded. So just as closely as the client is looking at you to make sure you're the right fit for them, in turn, you're looking at them to make sure they're the right fit for you. So why don't you kind of tell us, our listeners, what you're looking for?
Yeah, certainly. So we have this term here at BFB called PhDs, but ultimately, people that are passionate, hungry, and driven. We kind of say that it's kind of a funny term, but I think that's what every franchisor wants. But in the case specifically with British Swim School, it's really someone that wants to give back to the community. I think that's probably one of the biggest things. We have owners from all walks of life. We've got people from former marketing backgrounds, some of our franchisees that came from the swim industry, IT, other, healthcare and other avenues like that too. So we teach and train both the business and, the aquatic side of what we do. So really largely it's just for that owner that wants to make a difference and kind of, build and scale a solid swim business across their territories. I don't know, anything from your perspective, Ashley, that you'd like to add to that?
I think that one thing that is important to note is, our workforce is generally a little bit younger. You think about swim instructors, so it provides a really nice opportunity to kind of grow and mentor that, or either, directly or through that operations manager. So somebody who sees that as something attractive, you need to have some different skill sets than if you have, a workforce that's primarily in their, 30s, 40s, 50s. So
yeah, that's a great point. Mm-hmm. Anything else you think is pertinent to this little quick snippet on British Swim School?
I think one other thing that's good, we talked about the adult a little bit. We didn't talk about, we do offer special abilities classes as well, which I think is pretty cool. We talk a lot about making sure that everybody, regardless of age or ability, having the option to be a healthy, safe swimmer. And so, that's an additional kind of add-on opportunity, but I think allows our franchisees to reach some communities that probably typically don't get a lot of attention from the swimming school. Their mainstream swim program aren't really designed for them. So I think that's something to think about as well.
That's important. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, and also too, just a more general note, we are part of a larger franchise company called Buzz Franchise Brand. So we have a very experienced team here behind the scenes that supports with, just about every area of franchisees day in and day out. So definitely when it comes to marketing and business coaching and the aquatics, training that we provide, franchisees get a lot of support from Ashley and the rest of the team kind of behind the scenes here, which I definitely think is important.
And, that brings up one good point, a lot of help with marketing too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we've got dedicated folks on the British Swim School team, and then we've got about 11 or 12 Buzz franchise brands marketing team members. So it's kind of like having an agency at your hands when you sign on, which is pretty cool.
Awesome. Well, thank you both for doing this with me today. Thank you to those of you that are listening to this. If you have questions, you want to learn more about British Swim School, please reach out to me. You'll have my contact information because I'm going to be the one that's sending this out. And we can talk about the process and how you get introduced to British Swim School. I will tell you that they've got some great territories available here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area and also in Oklahoma. So thanks again, Ashley and Austin.
Thanks for having us.
Really
Sure.
appreciate it.